This meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals will come to order. I'll talk through how the flow of the agenda is going to go. We'll go through minutes from our previous meeting, and then we'll work through the two cases that we have on the agenda today. For those two cases, we will hear from staff an overview on the case. We'll get a report from the individual who served as the inspector on the case. We will then hear from the applicant and information on the case. We'll then have public comment. If there is any public to provide comment, we'll close that, and then we will move into a discussion of the board to work towards a decision on said case. So with that, I will get us started with the reading of the minutes.
Motion to waive the reading of the minutes and approve as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you very much. So we will move on to then our first case for the afternoon, which is 465 Fuller Avenue Northeast. So I will start by inviting staff to come forward and share information on the case.
Good morning, good afternoon. The first case on the agenda today is 465 Fuller Avenue Northeast. This is a returning case previously viewed by the board and then tabled, and I'll get into that in a moment. But just for some background, this property is on the northeast side of the city of Grand Rapids, just south of the 196 interstate. You can see it there indicated by the yellow star on the map. It's in the TNTBA zone district, and you can see the property outlined in blue just off of Fuller Avenue Northeast, south of the interchange between Fuller Avenue Northeast and 196. The applicant is requesting a deviation from transparency requirements to provide privacy for their business. In August of 2025, this case was heard by the board and then tabled to give the applicant some alternative options to work through with staff, and we'll address those later in the presentation. This application is for one of the commercial storefronts in the building, Biofuse Wellness, which you can see on the right side of the commercial storefront. The City of Grand Rapids zoning ordinance requires that all glass in windows, doors, and display windows shall be 70% or greater visible light transmission, meaning that 70% of the light needs to pass through the glass between the storefront and the exterior and vice versa. As you can see on the image, the site is improved with a single-story structure with 3 tenant spaces, and then this variance application is just for that northernmost tenant space, which extends from the gray architectural detail on the right through the yellow tan brick to the left of that sign that says Biofuse Wellness. The site and structure were approved by variance in 2017. The use of the structure, the specific tenant space, is as a beauty and a spa service, which is permitted in the zone district. The use is not proposed to change. The initial review for the building permit for Biofuse Wellness initially indicated that this use would require special land use in the zone district, as it was initially viewed as a medical office. Upon discussion with the applicant, it was determined that this is not a medical use, and it is instead a beauty and spa service as an infusion spa, and did not require special land use in the zone district and could just be permitted by right. This variance case has arose from a code compliance case about the application of the window film, which you can see here in the photos. It's the blue and orange tint on the windows. That window film was not on any of the building plans when this tenant fit out was submitted for permits. Condition on the building permit for Biofuse Wellness did state that there are no changes to exterior materials, and any site features and interior treatment for existing glazing shall be maintained at its current level of glass clarity and shall meet the transparency requirements of the zoning ordinance. Additionally, a condition of the special land use approval for the overall site and the overall building stated that transparency requirements shall be met. Since this case has been tabled, the applicant and planning department staff have worked on a couple of alternative options, and let me pull those up. First discussion regarding alternatives was relative to a privacy film that could still meet transparency requirements, but would be on all of the windows. So not necessarily clear glass, but a film that would still meet the 70% VLT. After discussion with the applicant, that product just does not exist, so we moved on to another alternative option. That alternative was the application of a 50% visible light transmission film on the windows shown in yellow. The applicant had communicated to staff that the priority was for patient privacy, so the areas identified in yellow were identified as the windows that would be most appropriate to cover to provide patient privacy. And then the third alternative discussed was keeping the 30% existing film on the windows, but limiting it to the areas highlighted in yellow. That apparently did not meet the applicant's needs for privacy, and I'll certainly let the applicant go into detail on what their expectations for the space is relative to the window film. So the case before you today is identical to the case that came before you in August of 2025 for the window film application that exists on the building to essentially stay on all of the windows of the commercial storefront. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Schaefer.
Thank you so much, Rowan. Appreciate it. As Rowan went over, we've previously considered this. We asked that the applicant work with the city. So I don't have any additional comments other than to ask the applicant to come up and explain his ask here today.
And can you please start by stating your name for us?
Yes, Justin Bing.
Thank you.
So as Rowan was saying, we kind of had the three options there. What those three options basically showed was that there were three different VLT options where we had no location options of which windows could that be applied to or not. So I'm not here necessarily looking here to argue the VLT as much as looking for a uniform application of that. There's two main functions of the window film. There's operational and kind of patient safety, and so the operational needs of that is the light has a direct effect on our IV bags that we have, and then especially in the one room that we don't have the film on.
Rowan, would you mind pulling up the layout? Thank
Actually,
you.
do you need me to scroll? Is that it?
Yeah, if you scroll down like 3 pages. And they can see what's on the screen, so you can use your cursor to indicate.
Cool. Right here. So this prep room here, this is where we mix our IV bags, and we have some obviously open area in this as well. And so I'm also looking to be able to have film on those windows as well. So if we're getting to the basic of this, if we're already approved to be able to have 50% on, I mean, even 70%, we're even having the ability to keep what we have on these existing windows. So I'd say like our first option would be to keep what we have without having to remove it and redo everything. If that option is not available, then it would be taking the offered 50% and being able to uniformly apply it to all windows. Obviously, there's the privacy aspect of this. There's the operational aspect with the ingredients of our IVs basically will degrade if they're in that much direct sunlight. So this helps prevent that. And also too, to back up, I know part of the original conversation of this was this self-created or not. Being in entrepreneurship for about 10 years now almost, I've reviewed about 15 different leases with our 4 locations that we currently have. Every single lease that I've looked at has had window covering like sections in it of what's required and what's not. This lease did not. That's why we did not think it was going to be an issue. That's why it was not put in the original plan plans as well, because we didn't think it was going to be an issue, and we would be able to take care of that after the build-out was approved. And so that's part of that. And also, too, with the sign company that we utilized. We've utilized a sign company at our old location as well. Even at that one, they still, I remember specifically talking with them about code and compliance issues with what we could put there. So again, using a licensed sign company, that's a due diligence that they would do as well. And so that's kind of how this all came to be, and then we got a violation on us. So. And there's obviously the aesthetic component of this. This is a very nice building, obviously probably one of the nicest buildings in that corridor. And so if we have window decals like we have only on certain windows, not on other windows, that doesn't have a nice uniform look as well. So clearly there's an aesthetic component to this as well. And two, the fact of like, when we first looked at this property, this is a very unique property, and the board had mentioned that at our initial meeting with you guys. And so there was a lot of complexity to this development from the get-go. Even from that initial board meeting, the initial zoning meeting that we had back in July or August, some of the statements made during that time was the property had been developed through a series of extraordinary circumstances and is not a traditional business district. It is much more of a suburban drive-through. The area is also not walkable, and this will never be a walkable business district despite the planning goals. Additional, this tenant went into a unique situation, so the approval would not apply to every building around. And also looking at this, part of the prior conversation was looking at our old location that was on Wealthy Street. I don't view any relevancy of our old location to our new location. The point of moving locations as a business is typically to gain something better. Well, I just hit something, sorry. Better location, better marketing, better, in this situation, it was a better position for us. I mean, we're directly in this corridor that gave all of our customers super easy access. So I don't really, this is our old location here, so I don't really see what the relevance of the old location is to this discussion. But, so if we cannot have the existing what we already have, I would just be looking to have the 50%. Like Rowan mentioned, the 30% not being available, when you have this type of perforated window film, this manufacturer only has 50/50 or 70/30, which is what we currently have as the 70/30.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for coming back a second time and working with staff. When you talk a little bit about, and this may be a question for Rowan or Tyler, or our council, if we don't pick specific windows, right? It's just a variance for or a reduction in the VLT or requirement for the entire building. It's not like we go window by window.
Generally, yes. I think if the applicant was amenable to finding an alternative request, we could modify the request and write a motion accordingly with conditions but the applicant has requested a variance of all of the windows.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was
I-
doing what I need to do. It's fine if it's just for the whole building, so.
I would say, I don't know if I can speak or not.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
I mean, if somehow we are only allowed to have, I mean, technically we look at this, it's 1, 2, 3, it's technically 4 windows.
You can use the mouse so that way we can
Yeah,
follow
sorry.
along with you. Yeah, thank you.
This one right here it's one window, but it's just broken up by that wall, so it's still, I mean, this is like a separation, so I don't know if you want to call that 2 windows or 1. Same here. If it's we are only limited to X amount of windows, I would much rather have this covered than this smaller section covered. But then still, I feel like if we look at this from an aesthetic standpoint, that's going to break things up quite a bit and not look as nice.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to say, that makes a difference.
No, I just appreciate it. Again, I was just trying to understand. We don't get too many window film zoning appeals here, so I wanted to be clear about what we needed to find. Also, if we grant a variance, it runs with the land, so we don't like to be what's specific to a business for that reason. Okay, Mr. Bing covered the questions I had. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, any other questions from the board?
I will add one more thing, if I can.
Please.
Is the fact that it looks like in the original, what is this? The special land use that was originally created for this property, there was specific in there that the planning director shall take operational requirements into account when considering the north elevation. Obviously, that's just specific to the north elevation and not, I guess I'd say the east, the front of the building, where the other window graphics are. But again, it just points to the uniqueness of this building, the trouble that to even make it what it is today, and the fact that it's fully leased out is a positive as well. So.
Great, thank you so much. If there's no further questions, if you can, oh, please.
Mr. Bean, can you clarify the windows and the entryway, the reason why those are tinted? Is it a necessity for the doorway windows to be tinted?
Those, I argue the fact that all of them should be tinted due to kind of the reasons I stated in the sense of privacy. Yes, we're not doing direct things right there, but our front desk is right there. These two little kind of half walls are like slatted wood, partially see-through walls. So they do just some blocking into the other areas and not. So I mean, if this is I have to choose, that's less concerning to me than the other ones. Okay. Again, this prep room here, like this is our stock, our storage room, our mix room. There's a lot of stuff in that room in a sense of like value as well, and probably not the greatest just to have visibly open. And again, we could say, well, you should have known that to begin with, but when none of this was in our lease or anything of that nature, I even look across the street and I see blacked out windows on the industrial building across the street. So it seems like it's allowable.
Go ahead, Ms. Swanson.
At the last hearing, I don't microphone. It's like turning on your Zoom.
Mute.
At the last hearing, I don't remember much discussion about the operational needs and the IV bags being impacted by the light. Is that something new that you've
No, I thought we
to
brought
learn?
that up, but
we
Yeah,
touched on it?
we touched on it, but if you'd like more detail, I'm sure Mr. Bing will be happy to provide it.
No, I just wondered if that had been a problem because we were looking at the other facility, and my guess is that the layout of that didn't cause a problem at that point.
no, that building, it was kind of unique because we were on an alleyway. I forgot that little one-way street was called, but it was like on the main building was on Wealthy, but there was one alley that went up kind of perpendicular off Wealthy, and we were on that little side street, Calkins, actually, now I remember.
Correct.
And so directly across from us, we had another building, and so that kind of blocked a decent amount of the light. Honestly, I wanted to put up window decals. We were going to be moving anyway, so I wasn't going to spend $5,000 when we were going to be moving within the next year, and that wasn't as big of a deal with the light. They're both facing east, technically, but that one, we didn't have as much of it coming in. And then the windows, too, were lower. They weren't all the way up to the ceiling like they are at this location as well,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
And yeah, if you've ever seen any of our stuff, a lot of our IV bags are like yellow colored. And if you have like direct sunlight on it, it'll degrade in like 10 minutes basically, so.
And then one other question, because I've been driving around this site a lot. And in the area to the right on the floor plan, that's where the cars kind of come in and go to the right, and there's actually a 36-inch wide sidewalk, I believe, there, and then cars,
Yeah,
and then a drive lane.
parking's a mess.
Well, but I guess to my point, it's not a high-traffic area because people are parked there. My guess is that's probably maybe where employees might park or could park. So I'm wondering if you thought about the privacy concerns there, because someone would have to have, be looking and have really good eye vision to see who might be sitting in that reception area. And I know we're not here to pick and choose windows, but we do have to see if the zoning ordinance can be met. And I'm wondering if there was any consideration to moving that blockage over to your prep room, if that was of a greater concern.
Well, I'd say a few things to that. You're referring to this little walkway, right? That's outside right here, correct? On the screen?
Right, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a walkway to a trash,
Yeah, it's really.
and no one's really walking.
No, yeah, there's like 3 parking spots there that kind of get utilized by staff. I mean, traffic here is a whole different topic that we could get into. I mean, we've had so many times that like we literally have, it is wrapped around the building. You can't even enter off Fuller Avenue. You can barely even get on from that, I don't even know what it is, but there's that one side street between us and the Elbow Room.
Race Street.
Yeah, yep. It is insane the amount of traffic that we get wrapped around this building. The other component to that is we can't move that room because we have to have water. We have to have a sink in this prep room. So to be able to swap those 2 rooms, it really wasn't, it wouldn't be feasible at this, I mean, nothing's not undoable, but.
And I appreciate, that wasn't my suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into laying out your business and the efficiencies. I was looking at maybe swapping the film
Yeah.
from
yeah.
window to window.
But yeah, and the drive-through is like literally directly, I mean, the corner of this building is basically the drive-through. I mean, the drive-through window is more on the way over here, but the whole drive-through goes directly, I mean, it's like 2 feet off the back of the building, probably, maybe
Yeah.
3. I mean, but yeah, when there's cars wrapped around, it is literally, I mean, there's cars basically right here.
But to my point, there's cars there and there's a drive lane there, so it's not like they're right up next to the windows. That's what I was.
Yeah, no, they're not directly right up to the window. No, but you'd still, I mean, you're within 25 feet. There, I mean, no more from me to that window.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I can't remember if we discussed in the last meeting. Have you considered roller blinds on the interior?
Yes, I mean, obviously you guys have those right here, which look nice. But Rowan will speak better to this than I obviously will, but I think that requires 25% or something like that.
Yeah, the ordinance would limit any shades over windows during business hours to 25% of the window area. Yeah,
But then what, after business hours, it doesn't matter?
correct. When the business is closed, they could be drawn all the way down.
It doesn't matter style, Venetian blinds, roller blinds.
So again, I mean, it's like we have 4 options, 4 or 5 options. We can take everything off and have nothing. We can have roller shades that, 25% during business hours. We have 50/50 on these, or we have the existing on this. So again, I'm kind of just looking to somehow be able to figure out a way that we can, like I said, if it's not every window where the 2 walkways, or like the 2 windows next to these 2 right here, so be it. I would just really like to be able to have these covered as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions for the applicant? Oh,
Just real quick, do you happen to know your lease termination date?
No, not offhand, but it'd probably be, I was trying to think how long these have been here for over 2 years, these window graphics. So I'm assuming our lease is probably in 2.5 to 3 years it'll be up.
I think it was a 5-year.
Yeah, 5 year, yep.
Okay, thanks.
And yeah, I think we signed in, no, I can't remember honestly when we signed it. 22, 23?
All right, thank you. We can go ahead and have a seat. I will, would you like to open it up for public comment? So if anyone's here for 465 Fuller Ave Southeast and would like to speak for public comment, feel free to come up. All right.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so the public hearing is now closed. So we will discuss as a board. I would like to just ask one clarifying question before we go ahead. So we've talked about a lot of different options. And so I just want to be clear about what is being requested through this variance.
Yep, so the original request is for the existing window film, which would be a reduction from 70% VLT down to 30% VLT on all windows. So that was the original variance request submitted back in 2025. That's the request before you today. I would recommend you make a decision on that initial request and then see what the applicant's appetite would be for maybe a revision. I would maybe want to counsel with the attorney office if we can modify the request and we can take a short recess to do that. Or there is an administrative departure available for these window films. All of the three options that were discussed with the applicant would have been handled administratively with a reduction to window film. So staff would be happy to take direction from the board on if the board would advise staff on taking any of those options. Staff, Assistant Planning Director Tyler Kent and I felt that all three of those options presented under alternatives would have qualified for administrative departures. So I would recommend that if the board feels like one of those is appropriate, just give that recommendation to staff to handle administratively.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure we were all thinking about those different options. Okay. Ms. Schaefer, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you. So my motion, as it was set out in the notes from our August meeting, my feelings have not changed. So I won't be making a motion to approve. So if somebody else feels very strongly and the board would like to move in that direction, I would ask that somebody else make a motion. Otherwise, I'm happy to make a motion to deny. And I know that we can do different things here. The applicant indicated that he was open to a 50 VLT film instead of a 70. I just personally can't get past self-created. We're supposed to find that the immediate practical difficulty, which in this case is his operations, the Starbucks traffic, sunlight on his product, causing the need for the variance, which is the film on the windows that does not meet the ordinance, was not created by an action of the applicant. And in this particular case, the applicant signed the lease. He signed the lease knowing that Starbucks was there and knowing what type of business he provided and knowing what type of prep room he would need in order to not degrade his product. I don't understand how I get away from that. He's a business owner. I can appreciate it. The lease didn't call that out. I can appreciate it. Sorry, I'm supposed to let my dog out. Apologies for that. The fact of the matter is, though, is he seems to be an experienced businessman, as his testimony captured, and it seems to me that if this was such a need for his business, for the privacy of his patients, for the protection of his product, that this would be something that he would ensure that he could do in the business that he has. And again, Starbucks was already there with the traffic when he leased this building. And so for those reasons, I can't get beyond that this was not created by the applicant. That being said, you may feel differently and wish to give him leeway to work with Rowan and Mr. Kent and be granted an administrative denial. You may also be willing to approve the 70%. And if that's the case, then I welcome the conversation, or if you'd like to make the motion.
Question to order.
Can you turn your, yeah, thank you.
I have a question to order here. This was tabled. Is the original motion still on the table and needs to be voted on?
Based on the meeting minutes from this, when this case came, the motion was pulled off the table, was removed from the table, or removed from whatever it was withdrawn. Thank you. That is the official word. So it was withdrawn. So it would have to be
I think you're kind of starting from scratch. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so forgive me for not having the benefit of that experience. But to me, you have this agenda item in front of you. It's been properly noticed and on the agenda. So now you're kind of starting from scratch and would need a new motion if the board's inclined to take action.
Great, thank you. And just another procedural question. If this particular variance was denied, would there still be potential for the applicant to come back and work with staff on an alternate solution? What is possible there?
Yeah, certainly. I think any of the three options before, if Assistant Planning Director and Tyler Kent and I felt like they met the criteria for an administrative departure, nothing in this meeting would change those criteria for evaluating an administrative departure. So I think all of the options identified as an alternative would still be viable options administratively.
Just additionally too, because I think there was because there was conversation around potential selection of which windows, if they keep the 30% on highlighted windows, preference from the applicant to choose different windows. Would that be something also that could be done through staff discussion? Okay.
We would
great.
evaluate that based on the criteria of the administrative departure.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So any counter perspective to what Ms. Schaefer's laid out on the table?
I have more of a question for the legal side of things, because it's the not self-created question. And we've just.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, I'm on.
All right.
I'm on.
You're just far away.
Am I just so far? Too tall.
Thank you.
And we've discussed it at various trainings. The concept being, if we go back to more of a traditional case, let's say, like a building on a hill, right? We've had a couple buildings on a hill, right? They want to put a building in a place on a hill that then creates the necessity of the administrative, or of the appeal, right? They don't have to put it on the hill or anywhere on that site, right? So how does that then relate to, I guess, this case where it's not a physical aspect of the site per se, it's more of an operational concern. I honestly don't have any idea how those things relate conceptually.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry.
Oh, and
No, please. I'll weigh in.
Yeah, I think for me, it's how that connects then to the other findings that we have to make a variance. So for example, if all the sites around him had similar film and, they were the only ones. But when we talk, so substantial property right, so we have to look at it as like a whole, right? But when we get to self-created, for me, it means that it's not necessarily you want to build a house on a hill, everybody else is allowed to build a house on the hill, but you can't because the zoning changed, but you, and you didn't create the hill, right? That's just the parcel. You bought it on the hill. In this particular case, what speaks to me is that was all known to this applicant, right? And so I may not be clarifying this as self-created is always the hardest one. It's always the hardest one because isn't everything self-created if you want to do something on a piece of property? And I think, and feel free to weigh in if I'm interpreting this wrong, but for me, it's a matter of degrees. And in this case, you know, I looked a lot at the not self-created, how it was laid out, and I broke it down in my mind. What's the immediate practicality that's causing this? The traffic, privacy, and product degradation, right? And then it can't be, and that causes the need for this window film. Okay, so they need the variance for the window film. And then what's the next part of it? Was that difficulty created by the action or inaction of the applicant? So in this particular case, the applicant is saying, I signed the lease after Starbucks was there, so I knew where the drive-through was. I knew it was going to wrap around the building. I knew what type of services I provided. I knew the layout of the building, and I knew I was going to have to protect my product from degradation. And what then he says is that, but I'm not responsible for that because the lease didn't call it out, and because we, the sign company did it. So in my mind, it's like, but you're still the business owner and are responsible for leasing an appropriate property that is going to meet your business's needs. So if this was such a critical part of your business, why, if as an experienced business owner, didn't you confirm that you could operate in the way that you wanted to operate before you signed a lease? And that's why I can't get beyond self-created, right? Because it's not a hill. It's not a part of the land, right? You bought that piece of land knowing that you should have known that you couldn't build a house there.
I think that is helpful information.
Hey, you can disagree with me. I mean, go ahead. But if somebody has a better argument and can, you know, make the argument for not self-created, I'm here to listen to it.
No, I don't have any disagreement, but I think it is helpful to clarify it in such detail for.
I completely agree, and I think what's necessary here is that what I've heard Rowan say is that even if we were to decline this particular ask or the ask for 50-50, there's still the opportunity for this applicant to work with city staff to find an administrative departure and find a solution. So, you know, I just want to clarify that it's not, and a lot of ours is either we say yes and it's nothing, right? Or we say no and too bad, so.
So please.
I'd just like to make another comment that because appeals decisions run with the land ostensibly forever, it doesn't seem like an appropriate decision to make where an administrative departure will live with the applicant and when his business is gone, it goes away. So that seems like the more appropriate route for a solution.
Okay, so it sounds like then we would be willing to entertain a motion.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and your mic is off.
I had it on and then I turned it off. I missed. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to deny the dimensional variance request for 465 Fuller Ave Northeast based on the following reasons. Number one, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. This is not met. While there is significant traffic from the Starbucks that do create a somewhat extraordinary circumstance on the property, and that would be C. B, it is a recently built retail space in the zone district meant for retail space, and the applicant signed the lease with Starbucks there and the traffic readily apparent to them. Substantial property right, not met. in looking at the other businesses around in that district, as well as reviewing applicants' application for the variance, while there were some business owners that had film on the windows, those were out of compliance as well and were being referred to code enforcement by the city. Not self-created, as discussed earlier, not met. The applicant rented the property knowing Starbucks was there. They also were well aware of their operational needs to run the business in that space. While the applicant noted that neither the lease nor the sign company that, I guess it's installed the VLT film, noticed him that this film was not allowed in this zone district, that does not absolve him from responsibility of understanding what was possible on this property. As a result, I find that not self-created is not met. No substantial detriment. In this particular case, not substantial detriment. In my earlier motion, I had indicated this was not met because of the walkability of the area. One of my fellow BZA members made a good argument about this, so I'm going to go ahead and say this one is met, that it would not create a substantial detriment to adjacent properties. In this particular case, it's a high traffic area, and while we wish to make that area more walkable, having the film would not be a detriment to that. Finally, master plan zoning ordinance, that the variance is consistent with the master plan. Again, I'll change my opinion based on a good argument last time and say that while the area is zoned for walkable retail, I would indicate that the film does not, in this case, impact the intent of the master plan. But for those reasons, I make a motion to deny this variance.
And can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion or any other considerations from staff we should think about?
Nope, I would have asked Ms. Schaefer to just kind of work through the previous motion, but she did that wonderfully in the motion. So.
Anything else? All right, so all those in favor of Ms. Schaefer's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so the motion is to deny for the applicant. You can work with staff and consider some of those alternatives that were offered and that sound potentially amenable, so please feel free to do that. Thank you so much. All right, so we will move on to our second case for the afternoon, and that is 721, 723 Cherry Street Southeast. So again, I will ask staff to come up and provide a bit on that case.
Okay. Our second case on the agenda is the expansion of a non-conforming use at 721, 723 Cherry Street Southeast. The applicant is requesting an expansion of a non-conforming use. A non-conforming convenience store with beer and wine sales in the traditional neighborhood mixed-density residential zone district is seeking approval to expand alcohol sales to include packaged liquor. The site is located in the southeast corner of the city, indicated on the map with a yellow star. This is a very unique area. It's zoned residential on Cherry Street, which is a mix of residential zone districts and commercial zone districts and office zone district, but this property is zoned mixed density residential. In 1948, it was zoned commercial and was rezoned to residential at that time. It has remained zoned residential since 1948. There's quite a history on this property, and I do have the archive files for all of the variance cases dating back to 1972. So if the board would like to dig into the history of any of those, we have those materials. But I did want to go through a couple of the notable variances, starting on page, starting on page 31 of the packet. The variance on February 19th, 1976, variance number 11948. This is one of the early variances to establish a commercial use in the building. So this request was to establish a takeout food business with amusement device machines, which are like pinball and other video games. That variance was approved with the condition that the number of amusement devices be limited to 3 and no pool tables, and that the business would be closed from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. On April 6, 1978, variance number 12461, there was another request, and that was to use this building as a grocery store. That variance was approved. Jumping a little bit further forward onto page 32 of the packet, variance granted on February 7th, 1985, variance number 14189. This was a request to extend an existing convenience store into an adjacent building. That variance was approved on a year-to-year basis with the following conditions. One of those conditions was that there was no sale of alcoholic beverages. As this was a year-to-year approval, it came back the following year on February 20th, 1986. There was not a condition that no alcohol sales be offered, so it is staff's determination that this is the appearance of alcohol in the convenience store was in 1986 because of the removal of that condition, and then subsequent cases before the Board of Zoning Appeals do reference the sale of beer and wine at this store after 1986. So tracing back through the history, staff believes that this is where alcohol sales was established at the location. All of those cases tracing back to 1986 reference this as a non-conforming convenience store in consultation with the attorney's office. For this request, it was evaluated as an expansion of a non-conforming use. So this use is non-conforming. It doesn't have legal rights as would be established like under a use variance. So that's why the nature of this case before you today is an expansion of a non-conforming use, because this business does not have the legal rights that would be provided under a normal use variance. So just briefly wanted to run through the standards of review for a non-conforming use. Those would be listed on pages 33 and 34 of the packet. There are 3 standards that the board uses to determine if a non-conforming use can be expanded. The first standard would be that the enlargement shall not have a substantial detrimental effect on the use and enjoyment of adjacent uses or lots. The second standard is that the enlargement will comply with all parking sign or other applicable regulations for accessory uses for the area affected by the proposed enlargement, increase, or greater area. And finally, the third standard is that the enlargement will not occupy an area larger than 25% of the original non-conforming area. Looking at the property a little bit more specifically, as I previously mentioned, the site was zoned commercial until 1948 when it was rezoned to a residential zone district. Based on the facades, it appears that the building has 4 storefronts. Looking through all of the variance cases dating back into the 1900s, the internal workings of the business have changed considerably over time. So I don't have a good handle on what the historic layout of the building was, but just visually it does look like there are 4 storefronts in the building. They are all internally connected, so you can walk from one side of the building to the other. The westernmost storefront, which would be on the left of the building, is an ice cream parlor. The applicant provided some layouts of the site, and this area is labeled as room 1 on the applicant provided plans. The eastern 3 storefronts, which are again on the right, operate as Cherry Hill Market, with the public entrance to the market in the middle 3rd storefront, second from the right, kind of just left of the little market icon. Room 2 of Cherry Hill Market, which is the area here identified or highlighted on the image, is the area that includes the current beer wine sales. This area also does have some cheese and flour sales. The size of this room is about 830 square feet based on the applicant provided plans. Room 3, which is the area highlighted and covered by the market symbol, Includes grocery, retail, and a beer cave in the back. Also includes the main store entrance and the cash register. And then room 4, which is all the way on the right, includes coolers and freezers for more grocery products. I will also note that Cherry Park is adjacent to the subject property and is improved with a basketball court, tennis and pickleball court, play structures, and a splash pad. It also has a small building in the northeast corner of the park that is home to the East Hills Council of Neighbors. As I mentioned previously, the most consistent occupancy of the building as a convenience store traces back to 1985. Any changes to the building or intensity, because it is a non-conforming use, require review and approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals. And then subsequent documentation in the record after 1985 refer to this use as non-conforming. So we are fairly confident as the city that this is a non-conforming use. Cherry Hill Market currently holds an SDM license from the state of Michigan, which permits the sale of beer and wine. Based on prior variances, we determined that the beer and wine started being sold at the location again in that 1986. The applicant is requesting approval to sell packaged liquor, which is an SDD license from the state of Michigan, so it is an additional license. The state of Michigan has already issued the license for this location, but the applicant still requires local approval prior to selling liquor at this location. And then the attached plans show the area of liquor sales behind the cash register in room 3. The City of Grand Rapids zoning ordinance regulates SDM and SDD license separately. You can just think of them as the beer and wine license and the packaged liquor license. Where an existing location has approval to sell SDM, let's just say it's a normal commercial use in a commercial zone district, they went to Planning Commission and got approval as an SDM license to sell beer and wine. If they wished to add packaged liquor, they would have to go back to Planning Commission for approval for that SDD license. It is viewed as an expansion of a previously approved use. And so working with the attorney's office, it was a similar case here where the addition of the second license, the SDD license for packaged liquor, was viewed as an expansion. Even though the footprint of the business isn't changing, it's the addition of that second license that is determined to be the expansion. Planning Commission would normally review both of these license types, but because it is non-conforming, the Planning Commission has no approval over non-conformity, so it is before you today to determine the expansion of the nonconformity. We have received 2 letters of opposition for the use, both of which are in the packet. Staff also sent an email to the East Hill Council of Neighbors. We did not get a response back. The East Hill Council of Neighbors should have also gotten a green postcard in the mail, both because this application is within the boundaries of the neighborhood and because the neighborhood offices are within 300 feet of the subject property. The City of Grand Rapids Planning Department also reached out to the City of Grand Rapids Parks Department for comment, given the proximity of Cherry Park to this application. The Parks Department did express concern about the proximity of packaged liquor sales to a park. So I know that was a lot, and I've just got a little bit more to go through, so please bear with me. I talked through the 3 review standards previously. They are not review standards that we work with often because these cases are a little bit rarer. I would like to focus on standard number 1 for a minute, which is that the proposed enlargement, increase, or greater area shall not have a substantial detrimental effect on the use and enjoyment of adjacent uses and lots. If you would, in your packet, go to page number 36. I have adapted the alcohol review standards, which the Planning Commission uses to review alcohol requests. If the board wishes to use these standards to help make a finding for standard number 1 about detrimental impact, I think they might be a good guide. They are not directly the review standards for this case, so you would be using them as a guide to help you make a finding for standard number 1 regarding substantial detriment. So if Ms. Schaefer, who was assigned the case and would make the initial motion, would like to use those standards of review to help make a finding for standard number 1 for substantial detriment, I will underscore that these are just a guide as a recommendation and not tied to the actual review standards for the variance. So you will have to tie them back to standard number 1, substantial detriment, if you wish to use them as a guide. And then standard number 2 The proposed enlargement, increase, or greater area shall comply with all parking, sign, or other applicable regulations. And then standard number 3, the proposed enlargement, increased, or greater area shall not occupy an area larger than 25% of the original non-conforming area, which again would have been the area of beer and wine sales in 1986. We don't have great floor plans from 1986. We do have a rough floor plan of the location from a previous variance case, which is included in the packet. It is unlabeled, so we can't really determine the exact extent of beer and wine sales. Let's see if that white bar will disappear. But based on the floor plan from 1986, it is staff's determination that the area of beer and wine sales has likely exceeded the 25%. So if the board would make a favorable finding for this request, staff would recommend that the area of alcohol sales that exists today and the addition of packaged liquor would exhaust the 25%, and this essentially would be the upper limit of alcohol sales and packaged liquor at this location. And I'm happy to talk through that more if that was confusing. Let me pull up the floor plan. So this is the floor plan for the location as submitted in 1985. I do have this in physical form if you would like to view it as well. But this would be rooms 2, 3, and 4 as provided in the applicant, excluding the ice cream parlor.
Thank you for that. Ms. Schaefer, do you want to give us an overview?
Sure. Just special thanks to Rowan for going on that deep dive into the files and the historical tour there. Hope the dust didn't, kick up any allergies on you. Just a quick note about the building and the surrounding area during my visit. I think that probably Cherry Hill Market is known to all of us, but in case it isn't, Cherry Hill Market is surrounded primarily by residential houses, and then directly next door to it is a park. Down the road, we continues into a more commercial area with businesses and bars. As you head away from downtown, and then as you head towards downtown, it becomes even more residential. Happy to talk through with the applicant at this point.
Sounds good. So I'd like to invite the applicant up. And then I'll have you both please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Michael Brown, attorney from the law firm of Carlin Edwards Brown in Lansing. I'm the liquor license counsel for the applicant.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Chabra with Cherry Hill Market.
Great, thank you. So I'll go ahead and just tell us a little bit about the application, your case, anything you'd like to share about.
All right, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Let me begin by saying that as you've seen in the application, the request here is to add packaged liquor sales to a very small part of the overall operation of this store. The packaged liquor sales will be limited to the one area of shelf space behind the sales counter. There are not going to be huge displays of alcohol throughout the store or anything else like you might see in what you might deem a more traditional liquor store. This application and the addition of the SDD license here is essentially done to, one, help the business survive in a tough business climate for independent grocery stores. As you know, those type of stores are becoming dinosaurs as more and more people shop at big box stores and online and take their businesses to places other than these type of neighborhood markets. So this is an option to try and help this local neighborhood store and market survive. The other argument I would put forth is that by having an SDD or packaged liquor sales location like this in this type of location, helps cut down on people having to drive someplace that want to purchase packaged liquor. Sometimes there is a benefit to having packaged liquor stores being closer to residential areas because people will walk or ride their bike, or they will not take as much effort to go to some further away store. And so this is both a convenience to the shopping public as well as, in some sense, helpful to prevent that additional traffic to stores that are further away. And so I have seen in my practice of licensing businesses statewide that there is often, with the right operator, a benefit to a local or sort of neighborhood store like this where packaged liquor is offered but not necessarily highlighted as a major portion of the business. As you've seen in the packet, there are no changes being made whatsoever to the exterior or the size of the business itself. So therefore, we don't feel this is going to have any detrimental impact on the neighboring businesses, neighborhood, the park, or anything else. This is simply adding one more convenience to the list of items offered by this store. The store hours are not what you might see at a normal quote-unquote liquor store. This is not a store that's going to stay open late. This is not a store that's going to advertise or otherwise highlight its liquor sales. And so for anyone to allege that this is going to have any kind of detrimental impact on the surrounding area, I believe is a false assertion. And I would like to see someone put forth actual data to support that assertion. The fact that it's near a park doesn't create an assumption that it's going to have a negative impact on that park. If you look at the overall operation of this store and what it does, again, I think it's important that you distinguish between a store that offers packaged liquor and a liquor store. They are not necessarily the same thing. They might have the same license, but they're not operated in the same way. They're not marketed in the same way. They don't have the same end goal. And the end goal here is not to try and sell as much liquor as possible. If my client wanted to do that, it would find a different location for this license because this license could be used anywhere in Kent County. They want to use this here to try and help this neighborhood grocery store survive and help this neighborhood have a viable option for obtaining whatever packaged liquor they want without having to necessarily get in their car and go find it somewhere else. So with that, we'll be happy to take any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Questions?
Sure. So when you were looking to expand your license to an STD, what due diligence did you do to ensure that you were allowed to do so on this site?
So when we apply or transfer license from one location to another one, usually the state sends the notice to the city, and we asked MLCC if, we're okay to move this. We have to go through the state to get approval for this. And they work with the city, and they told us that everything is fine and, we can get it transferred. So that's how we got it. And we started selling alcohol, and I went to the city for another location, and we brought up Cherry Hill Market, and that's when I was notified that we're not allowed to sell liquor yet. We have to go through the zoning department. So from that day, we stopped selling liquor. We haven't sold it in almost 2.5 months now, and we're just going through the zoning now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When you, there on file, we have a couple neighbors who are concerned about the impact of liquor sales on the neighborhood. We also have the Parks Department expressing concerns. I'm curious to know, when you were selling liquor, did you see any adverse impact on the neighborhood or hear any complaints?
Not at all. Actually, if anything, we got a lot of good comments, and we have a lot of signatures from the customers right now too, that how much they love the idea, and we're only selling, we're actually even, when we even started ordering liquor, we started taking notes from people what they want to get, you know, so just for the regular customer convenience. So that's why even the normal liquor store usually have 40, 50, 100 feet wall of liquor. We got 16 feet wall of liquor, well, behind the counter, which not only gonna have tobacco, medicine, all the other stuff, and some part of it's gonna be liquor. So even that 16-foot wall, probably 8 to 12 feet, 8 feet is gonna be liquor, and rest of it is gonna be tobacco and other stuff.
Yeah. How long were you selling liquor before you were noticed by the city that you,
Not even a month.
not even a month? Yeah.
And I would like to note for the record that Mr. Schaber is correct, that when this application was filed, and the Michigan Liquor Control Commission indicated that it was a completed application ready for investigation, they would have sent a notice to the Grand Rapids Clerk's Office, just like all of the other applications for a license within that local jurisdiction, and no indication was filed by the City of Grand Rapids to the Liquor Control Commission or to the applicant that it needed any further city approval. So I'm not saying that excuses the fact that my client didn't know that there was a zoning issue here, but I am saying it should be also incumbent on the city that if it's that important to the city on something like this, then the city should make sure that the Liquor Control Commission and any applicant in the city is made aware of it at that time, and he could have dealt with this even before the license was approved and issued by the Liquor Control Commission. And so the city did nothing here, which is how we got issued the license and was actually able to activate the license before this issue ever came up.
Mr. Kent, can you speak to that about what the process is, or is that not something the clerk's office would even look at if the location is appropriate?
Yeah, I have not been informed, was not informed that we received any documentation from the state with regard to this liquor license. I don't know if the clerk's office did or didn't receive that.
Okay,
I didn't receive any documentation on it.
yeah, that's fair.
Well, I can simply tell you as a lawyer who's done liquor licensing for 30 years in literally every city and county in this state, that it is statutorily required that the Liquor Control Commission send out that notice, and the city or township or village gets it at the same time that the applicant gets it, notifying that the file is considered complete and going out for investigation. And there's a notation at the bottom of the letter that I'm sure my client has, indicating service to the city. It would have been emailed to the clerk's office, and if I thought I needed it, I would have printed out a copy and I could have brought you the date exactly as to when that notice would have went to the city. But it would have been sometime probably roughly a year ago.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown? Also, as somebody, I didn't know there was such a thing as liquor license attorneys. And I feel like that is something that I, as a law student, would have really liked to have known. So
Well,
you need to get the name out there, Mr. Brown.
I can tell you that when I was in law school, I didn't know it existed either. And a career as a liquor licensing attorney is something that just sort of happens. I don't know how it happened. It
Just kind of fall into it.
wasn't what I started out with my career intending to be, but it is what it has become. And now our law firm does more liquor licensing than the other law firm in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
And I probably have 50 clients here in the city of Grand Rapids alone.
Wow. Well, thank you. I'm done with questions.
So forgive me and for my lack of understanding here, but can you just clarify what packaged liquor is? Is that like the full range of liquor, or is that a subset of things?
Packaged liquor refers to a product that has a certain amount of alcohol content.
Okay.
So, and it is a product that is made through a distillation process. So whereas beer is brewed and wine is obviously made in a different fashion, each of which has to qualify based on their alcohol content. A spirit product is generally something that's above a 21% alcohol content, or what we would call 42 proof. And so anything that the store is selling that has an alcohol content of that level has to be sold through this distinct license called an SDD, Specially Designated Distributor License. And those products are actually sold by the manufacturers to the state of Michigan,
Right.
who acts as the wholesaler of those and provides them to the retail licensees.
But it isn't a subset of that. It's liquor at large.
It is a whole separate, it's its own category of alcohol product
Thank you.
and handled in its own separate distribution system.
Yep. Thank you. Go ahead.
So, excuse me, earlier, did you transfer the license to that location, or did you take over the license at that location?
No, it was transferred.
Okay, so you brought it, so what you brought over was an STD?
Yeah.
Because existing would have been an SDM there, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
Hearing a little bit of a disconnect, at least in my mind, of how much space you're requiring for liquor. It seems like the application asks for 25% of the floor area, where what you're describing is like an 8-foot shelf or an 8-foot vertical of shelf.
I think 25 is everything, including the beer and wine. And then in addition to the packaged liquor is how I heard it.
Well, so I guess my concern is the way that this approval seems to be structured is you could do 25% packaged liquor across the whole thing, where I wonder if there's a way to limit the packaged liquor to 5%.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
8 feet,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if the board would be able to tie that, a condition back to one of the review standards, that would be appropriate. The 25% that's referenced is an enlargement or an increase in nonconforming area can't exceed 25% of the original nonconforming area. That nonconforming area would be the extent of the beer and wine sales that was established in 1986. We don't know the exact footprint of that beer and wine sales in 1986. Based on the floor plan of the building at that time and the extent of beer and wine sales that exist today, staff is confident that it has increased since 1986. By how much, we don't exactly know. I think it would be fair to the board, for the board to have a condition on floor area, maybe solidify the floor plan as exists today as the extent of beer and wine, provided that it ties back to one of the review standards.
Okay, so we could just make a finding, if we chose to approve, we could make a finding that as it currently exists now with the beer cave and all the other, that is the 25%. And that would include the packaged liquor, and then we could say, but only 5% could be used for packaged liquor to account for what the business plans to do. No. Or is it, that's why I'm asking the question, because this is
Technically, maybe
complicated.
you can craft a motion that way. I might caution against getting too
I know.
micro detailed
Yeah.
with the management of the 25%. I think from an administrative perspective, you can grant up to 25%, and then I would suggest leaving it to the
Okay.
business owner to manage what that 25% looks like. But if you think you have enough evidence to start to divide out percentages and articulate that back to the provisions of the,
I think, yeah, no, fair point. And I think maybe it's just misunderstanding this. We've never gotten a non-conforming use like this, so forgive us as we manage. I've been on the board for 9 years, and this is a new one. So we could say, I think, Ron, what you were suggesting was that the 25% is the upper limit. So with this variance of this non-conforming use, if we approved it, we could say, this is the upper limit. This floor plan as it exists now with the hard liquor as planned, that is 25%.
Yep, I think that would tie to review standard number 3, and you could make a
Okay.
finding regarding that. And then that would exhaust the applicant's ability to ask for an expansion of a non-conforming use, because it ties back to when that non-conforming use was established, which again, it is in 1986.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, please.
So this 25% would apply to beer, wine, and liquor.
Right,
So-
because that's the non-conforming use.
So right now, it's beer and wine, somewhere in the vicinity, but not greater than 25%. That's what we are assuming. If we grant this, it could be 20% packaged liquor and 5% beer and wine.
Yeah, it could be however the
However
applicant
they-
defines it.
So it could be an expansion that way of packaged liquor or hard liquor.
Yeah, we often condition approvals on plans and testimony as well. So you could tie it back to the plans and testimony as described here today, that your approval would be conditioned on those. And so modifications to floor plan, I would maybe want to recess with the attorney just to double check, but test conditions on plans and testimony tie back to what is before you today.
And is this a non-conforming use that would run with the property regardless of who purchases it in the future? So this would, Cherry Hill Market would, that footprint would forever from now on have this variance.
Yeah, that is correct.
And then if you would indulge me just one more on this subject.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Because you talked about it tying back to testimony, and the fact that it runs with the land is something that I heard in testimony is will not change the hours, we will not highlight or advertise packaged liquor. So I want to know if those types of things are proper to the conditions as well, if the board chooses to approve it and if they choose to add conditions. Are those acceptable types of conditions based on the testimony of the applicant?
Provided that they tie back to the review standards, the board is within its discretion to add conditions relative to the review standards.
So I would ask, do we have any more questions for the applicant? I want to continue these conversations, but for the applicant specifically, do we have any questions? Go ahead.
Can we get the hours of operation as they are currently?
Right now, it's 9:30 to 11 on weekdays and 9:30 to midnight on weekends.
Thank you.
And
So when I was in your store earlier this week, I saw the nicely taped off, covered up alcohol sales behind the counter, but there was also a freestanding shelf in the middle of the store where there were some
Yeah,
Other liquors.
We put the sign up and we made sure our system is not scannable for liquor right now. And all the staff member knows that we cannot sell liquor.
Okay, but I guess going back to, again, where the liquor is in the store currently now and where it would be in the future, it is not all
We-
behind the counter?
It'll be all behind the counter. Only few of the mixers, which is like very low alcohol content, are sitting on the shelf you're talking about right now.
Yeah, let me clarify that nowadays, a lot of the alcohol manufacturing companies use names and labels and so forth to make it look like it's a spirit drink. Chances are, that's what's called a mixed spirit drink, which actually technically qualifies as a wine and can be sold with an SDM license. An SDD license is not required to sell
Okay.
those type of products, even though they look like they're alcohol, or I should say spirit-based. Those are often either wine-based or sometimes even beer-based, but they have names that make you think that it's a cocktail, often referred to as a canned cocktail. But those could be sold without the SDD license.
Okay.
That's why they're out in that space, out on the floor, like all of the other beer and wine products.
And then also, could I ask you to talk a little bit about any outreach you did with the neighborhood? And I will let you know that I live around the corner off of Cherry, and so I'm familiar with the area. I wasn't familiar with this coming in front of the zoning board until I got my packet, talked to some of my neighbors. I'm in the Heritage Hill Historic District. They were not aware of it, and it had not made any of the residents aware of it. East Hills was notified by the city, but there is also a Cherry Hills neighborhood organization that I tried to reach out to and was unsuccessful. And then I thought, I don't know if it was really my job to start seeing if people were aware of this. What kind of outreach did you do besides that?
I was told by the city to reach out to East Hills neighborhood building, which is right in the park. I have walked up there probably dozen of times. I have called and left voicemail probably 6, 7 times, and I'm out of luck. I have nothing came back to me.
And no other outreach to the Cherry Hill district?
I wasn't aware of it.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant specifically? Go ahead.
Thank you. Rowan, just for clarity, for the meeting minutes, the 25% threshold, was that considered for room 3 and room 2?
Yep, it would be
Plans?
rooms 2, 3, and 4, the Cherry Hill Market.
Okay.
Yep.
2, 3, and 4, okay.
That's the ice cream. Yeah, it relates back to the function. The 25% is really just tying back to 1986. So we don't have great records of the extent of beer and wine sales based on the floor plan from 1986. We're confident that it has expanded since then. So if the board is amenable to setting what is presented before you as the upper limit today, you would tie that to review standard number 3. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So go ahead and, did you have something else to add?
Well, yeah, I will just say, we don't oppose limiting it to the 25% that is called for as one of the requirements. But I do think it's strange not to have included the what we're calling room number 1, the ice cream parlor, when it is all connected, it's all considered one business, it's all licensed by the Liquor Control Commission, because it's under the same ownership and because it's all internally connected. The Liquor Control Commission at the state level would consider that all to be one business and all one space. And so you're effectively, if you're going to cut that off or separate it out for purposes of this discussion, you are creating a different licensed footprint here in the city than what the state has said. And the state has said if we wanted to, we could sell alcohol in the ice cream parlor. And so I don't, like I said, I don't have any problem applying this 25% limitation, and we're going to live with that. And we're going to honor what we've said here today in terms of only stocking these spirit products behind the counter in that shelving area. We're not trying to pull a fast one on anybody here to try and get approval by telling you it's going to be on that shelf and then putting it out somewhere else or expanding that. But I do think it's strange to carve out an area of the building that is clearly part of the building, clearly under this ownership, clearly licensed as we sit here today by the Liquor Control Commission, to say, well, we're just going to ignore that part because it's an ice cream parlor.
Yeah, I think for, in looking at the section of the code that's relevant here, I think what we're being limited by is that it's 25% of the original non-conforming area. So that's why we're looking back to these floor plans from 1986 to try to figure out where that 25% was as of 1986. That being said, when we discuss this as a board, we'll certainly take into account how things have changed since then, and also the fact that we don't have clear building plans here. So, but I understand your point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. All right, would you like to open up for public comment? All right, so if there's anybody here that would like to speak for public hearing, please feel free to come up. And then go ahead, I'll have you state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. I am here. I'm Jessica Young. I'm the Executive Director of the East Hills Council of Neighbors.
Great.
I have been asked to be here on behalf of the neighbors and the community regarding the proposal today. We did receive a couple of voicemails on my voicemail from the applicant. I just want to clear up, which I returned with voicemails. I encouraged him to email me and also told him about monthly meetings that we have where other neighbors did show up to talk about this issue and the board discussed it. I do want to start by saying that I appreciate the investment that has been made into this space. I think the Beer Cave is great. I like to be there. We really love that there is a neighborhood market there. That said, the feedback that we have received as a council has been very consistent. The neighborhood and neighbors do not support expanding sales from beer and wine to liquor. Their concern is based on what we've actually already seen with sort of a impromptu trial period of this rezoning. Recently, when liquor was briefly sold at the market before this process, the park next door started to see much more litter, especially those little liquor bottles. And that wasn't isolated, it became a pattern very quickly, enough that it was an immediate signal, even maybe without advertisement, that something had changed at the market. I started receiving complaints that neighbors regularly found themselves picking up those little bottles just to keep the park clean and usable. Cherry Park is a really important space for us. It's our neighborhood hub. It's where families gather, where kids play, where we hold community events. There's also a history there, past issues with illegal drinking that the neighborhood has worked hard to address over time. Recently, even when the social district was approved in East Hills, we intentionally left Cherry Park out of that in respect to that history and the work of previous generations of our board and our community. Expanding the liquor sales at this location directly pushes against that progress. It's important to note that liquor is not limited in our neighborhood. East Hills is very small geographically. We're Fulton to Wealthy, Union to Fuller. And in that space, we already have 2 other liquor stores and 3 local distilleries where liquor can be purchased to go. Today's request isn't about filling a gap, it's about adding pressure, or it is adding pressure to a location that's especially sensitive. Again, this is not about proposing the business. We want it to succeed. Beer and wine have coexisted in this space with the neighborhood for years without creating these same issues. Just adding liquor changes the impact, and we've already seen that firsthand. So we're asking you to take into account the proximity to the park, the pattern we observed, and the consistent feedback we have received from neighbors. We've seen the impact of this change already, and we're asking you to not make it permanent.
Thank you. And please state your name for the record.
Talking to it. Matthew Dupont, I'm current manager of the Cherry Hill Market. Been with the market about 4 years now. This is my first time ever hearing anything from East Hills staff. I've lived in the neighborhood a long time. I have not met you. Nice to meet you, but we should have met about
Can you
4 years
please
ago.
talk into the mic just so I can hear you?
yeah.
Thank you.
So one of the main concerns when we first started talking about this is the park, obviously. Everybody that works at the market is very involved with this community. We love it. We enjoy it. We love the customers we see every day. We try to build relationships with them. So the first month that she was talking about us doing liquor, the only change I saw in our customer base was that the people that wanted liquor now had it available. I wasn't seeing any new customers coming in, buying any liquor, anything like that. We weren't doing any small bottles. It was fifths only. So that argument to me is invalid. There's no leg to stand on there. We weren't doing small bottles. As far as the impact of the park, that's something we really do take very seriously. You know, we support the Thursday night music, sorry, I'm talking to the crowd here. Thursday night music nights, the third Thursday of every month. Very meaningful, right? It's a good neighborhood thing. But that is and was our main concern with the immediate neighborhood. The neighborhood has come so far in the last 15 years. If you're from the area, you'll know that. It's really has done tremendously well these last years. And we've always been there to steward that. That's what we're looking to do, to help it grow. Now, we're not looking to add liquor to tear that down the last 10, 15 years of growth. But we also don't want the customers that we see every day to have to go to the Wealthy Market, Spike and Mike's, whatever, not to talk them down, but you go to those stores and you don't want to be in the parking lot. Bars on the windows, that's not what our customer base wants. Not what we want either. So in that way, we are trying to provide the store we always have provided, but with everything that the customers want. So a one-stop shop. We're not looking to do a million SKUs of liquor. We're looking to do what the customers ask for, which is not small bottles, it's nicer bottles. That's really all we're trying to do. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment here? All right, I would like to, did you have?
I was going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I just want to also just note here, we had the couple of letters as part of public comment. And then, no, please.
There we go. Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we will close the public hearing. Do you want to start us, just any discussion or reflection?
Sure. So this is a bit of an odd one, as Rowan has noted, as Mr. Kent has noted, in terms of what we have to consider. So just to go over again, what we're talking about here today is that in order to enlarge a non-conforming use, we have to find that there's no substantial detriment on adjacent uses or lots. And then B and C has to do with parking signage, the 25%, which I think we can all get to, but I think the initial hurdle is the substantial detriment. As Rowan indicated, and as is in the packet, there is a section 5.9.05.E, alcohol sales and consumption review standards. These are not something that we are beholden to. However, we can use them as a guide. And in that spirit, I have looked at these to try to figure out, how we normally, the Planning Commission normally looks at alcohol sales in order to grant the ability to sell alcohol. I found it very notable that in this standard, which once again is used for a guide only to the substantial detriment effect, is really that the neighborhood is underserved by this use, or that there are adjacent parks or nearby parks will not be adversely affected. And I think that those two are particularly notable here, especially considering the testimony as well as the two communications that are in the file opposing this. So in my mind, the park being right next door is very concerning. And I can appreciate there can be differing opinions on if it affects the park or not, but I will say that the majority of the testimony from the neighborhood is that it would have a detriment to the park, to the surrounding area, to the residential area around it that they're trying to create away from the social district. That being said, I welcome anyone's thoughts and happy to talk through it before I make a motion.
Just one comment, because the Parks Department did weigh in on this, and Mr. Brady, if you could address that, please, because they weren't represented here today.
Yep. So the Planning Department contacted the Parks Department just to make them aware of the request. The city actually sent a notice to ourselves because we are a property owner within 300 feet. So the Parks Department was notified that the request was to sell packaged liquor, and the communication from the Parks Director was that that was, quote, a concern.
Okay.
And if I may, Ms. Schaefer, you mentioned underserved areas. One of our people who wrote a letter did address this, but I went out and actually did Google Maps and measurements. And to the, Attorney Brown's points about you want not to have people necessarily driving far or walking far to find their liquor if that is what they want to purchase. And I do point out that the Wealthy Street Market is 0.6 miles. It's a 14-minute walk or a 2-minute drive. Spikes and Mike's is a half a mile, 12-minute walk. Family Fair Grocery, which just started a year ago in January of 2024, selling packaged liquor, is just a mile away, so it's very close. To detrimental effects, I also appreciate the fact that the current owners are supportive and engaged and involved in the neighborhood, and I think that's great. This would run with that property forever. The next owners may not be engaged, involved, and supportive of the neighborhood. Things change, and I have seen changes in Family Fair where they now have security guards when you go in the store. They put gates down over the liquor in the evening. They have moved some of the liquor toward the door. It makes it a different shopping experience for me, where that's I go there more often than I'd like to think because I forget things. Same thing when I went into Wealthy Street Market, which is it's not just a liquor store. It's a small neighborhood grocery store. Plexiglass, people are up high. It's not necessarily where you would always feel like you want very comfortable. You feel like when you go in there, there's guards up, and there must be a reason for those guards. I've looked at other stores in the area that don't have that. There's a little Guatemalan grocery store there. They don't sell liquor. They don't have those types of safeguards and security. So one of the things the applicant has to address is making sure that they will take steps to minimize any negative impacts or spill over into the neighborhood. And I think some of the security measures that we see at some of these other stores are exactly those which could be necessary in the future, because other businesses in the area that do sell liquor have seen that. So I just bring those observations to the board's attention.
Thank you.
Do you want me to make a motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go then. I have my notes. Okie dokie. So this is a motion to deny the request to expand the non-conforming use of 721 and 723 Cherry Street for the following reasons. First, I find that the expansion of the use to allow for packaged liquor sales would have a substantial detrimental effect on the use and enjoyment of adjacent uses or lots. To reach that conclusion, I considered as a guide, section 5.9.05.e, alcohol sales and consumption review standards. First, the area is not underserved by the use. We have found that there is a number of other stores in the nearby area that sell packaged liquor that is readily available to the neighborhood. Two, it would contribute to economic growth. In this particular case, I would find that it is likely to contribute to economic growth, as the applicant testified. It is hard to run an independent grocery market in neighborhoods, and that packaged liquor may increase their financial viability. Number 3 is that that the use, this non-conforming use sales of packaged liquor is compatible with the neighborhood. As we have on the record, 2 different communications expressing of opposition, as well as the testimony from Ms. Young from the East Hills Neighborhood Group. They have noted that the neighborhood has been conscientious about protecting the park that is directly next door to the market, such that they even excluded them from the social district to maintain that. In addition to that, the market is completely surrounded by residential homes, and sale of packaged liquor is not really compatible, as we've heard through testimony, to the neighborhood or the park. In addition, number 4 has us consider adjacent parks or adjacent or nearby parks that they will not be as adversely affected. While there is conflicting information on the record as to whether or not the mini liquor bottles originated from Cherry Hill Market or not, I still find that the testimony establishes that the park, which is seen as a family gathering spot, would not be served by packaged liquor sales next door, and that it would be adversely affected by sales so close to the park. And then finally, considering whether or not that the applicant has considered and has procedures prepared so that the use would so that he has rules and procedures prepared that have the potential to minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood. In this particular case, while there's evidence on per testimony that there was some outreach done by the neighborhood to the neighborhood, and there are considerations to what they would sell, where they would sell it in the market, how much they would make available to the neighbor. I still did not get the sense that the applicant necessarily considered or talked to the neighbors in a way that would minimize the secondary impact. So I do want to acknowledge the applicant did put thought into it. Testimony from the manager, apologies, I forgot your last name, was that they do sponsor things in the neighborhood. They also are aware of their effect on the park. So I'm going to call that one a draw. Either way, all of those findings, the effect on the neighborhood opposition, all of that lead me to conclude that there would be a substantial detriment. And so I find that that particular point has not been met. The second is comply with all parking sign or applicable regulations for accessory use. This could possibly be met. We did not go through all of these particular necessities. I think that if substantial detriment was overcame, we could have met those, but we're not getting into that. So I'm going to say not met just because we didn't go through all the regulations. And finally, not occupy an area larger than 25%. Again, there is some ambiguity in the record in terms of what the amount of the original non-conforming area was of the building, but we could have reached a point where it was 25% of the building without issue. The significant issue here, and the reason why I'm making a motion to deny this application, is that I find that Section A, substantial detriment, would occur, and therefore, I don't know if I want to say anymore. Yeah, so finding that 8 is not met, and therefore my motion is to deny the expansion of the non-conforming use.
Second.
Any discussion or additional considerations from staff on this?
Yeah, Ms. Schaefer, I will just note for point 2, the proposed enlargement, increase or greater area shall comply with all parking. The square footage of the store isn't going to change, so there would be no change to parking requirements.
Fantastic. Let me make a change to my motion here. That B was met, and that there would not be any change to the existing building, and therefore it would be able to comply with all parking sign and other applicable regulations. Additionally, C, could have been met. It is the fact that it would have a substantial detriment effect on the use and enjoyment of adjacent uses to lots, which is the reason for my motion to deny the expansion.
Ms. Swanson, do you support?
Yes.
Okay.
And then finally, for point 3, I think given the ambiguity of the floor plan from 1986, and because we don't have exact square footages, given your reasoning under A, it may be worth considering just finding favorably for point 3, given the unknown in the square footages. And if your motion is still to deny on point A, the motion overall would still be denied.
Nope, I appreciate that. As we noted, this is our first time going through this here. Yes, I would amend my motion to note that C, not to occupy an area larger than 25% of the original non-conforming area is met. But again, because we were not able to meet the requirements of Section A, my motion to deny is still on the table.
Support. Okay. Board, any?
Just for the record, does the city have been through this process before? So was the city told that the application was in for the license?
And I'll let Mr. Kent address this as well, but typically the state will send license notifications to the planning department for 2 things. Alcohol sales, and then often like vehicle sales as well, anything that requires a state license. Sometimes often those letters require local sign off. I can't speak to this specific process and what happened in this specific process. In an ideal world, the planning department signs off on all of those local licenses. The processes can certainly be evaluated internally to identify any missing gaps.
Thanks. My concern is, I'm not saying that I'm for or against, I'm still pondering, it's just the idea that you were awarded a license, you think you can operate your business, you think you're okay, and then you get shut down, and you think, well, I was allowed to do it. So maybe you wouldn't make a huge effort to go out and talk to all your neighbors and see.
No.
And granted, business owner, I would have went out, I would have pushed to find out how many people were for or against it to see where I was at. This is me feeling a little bad for the applicant.
Understandable. Yeah.
And I understand what our job is to do, and there's enough people here saying that there is detriment to the community, but I don't know the way this happened. It was just really fair to the applicant. I don't think it had a fair shake from the beginning.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree on that, and I would encourage Mr. Kent and Rowan to dive into what happened in this case to make sure it's avoided again. But I also think the fact that we are considering an alcohol use just speaks to how unusual this entire process has been. But I hear you, and I also feel bad for the applicant that they were seemingly told yes, and now it could possibly be no. That is troubling to me, and so I hope the city will look into why that occurred.
Yeah, and speaking for the planning department, in past cases, not sure what happened in this case, typically we are noticed of those, whether it's alcohol, gun sales as well, those types of uses, we are notified. It's that then at that point, we engage with the applicant to talk to them about those processes and also talk about community engagement and reaching out to the neighborhood associations as well as adjacent property owners to let them know that the project will be in front of either the Planning Commission, in this case, the Board of Zoning Appeals, seeking your approval.
It just seems odd that the state typically doesn't move forward unless they have authority from the local municipality to approve it. It's just odd, that's all. Usually there's a part where it says local has signed off.
Sure.
It's just interesting. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Thanks.
Any other discussion on this before we take a vote? All right, well then, all those in favor of the motion to deny?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, that's 1 opposed. All right, so the motion carries. It was a motion to deny. I don't know, is there a work with staff, or is that what happens next?
I can certainly consult with our legal attorney, but
Okay.
This one seemed pretty, this was the path identified forward for this use.
Okay, thank you. And I just, I want to add, I also live in the neighborhood. I frequent Cherry Market. I don't want to undervalue their investment and their engagement in the neighborhood. So, I know this is probably an unfortunate, disappointing outcome, but we still, I'm still grateful for the investment in the neighborhood. All right. Anything else that we need to cover? Just, there is validation out in the hallway on your way out, just so you guys know. Anything else that we should cover before we close the meeting?
Just to move to discussion, Chair Rabot and I have just talked about ongoing trainings. I know a few of you have expressed some interest in the Planning and Zoning Essentials training I emailed out about a month ago. So I will get those of you who express interest registered for that. If that is in something you are interested in, please let me know. It's a virtual training. I can send those details out again. I believe it's 6 to 8, one evening. And so the city will cover the cost of those trainings as well, so it would be at no cost to you. So that option is available to you for ongoing training. And then Chair Rabot and I have also discussed at the end of regular meetings, kind of creating a hypothetical case and working through just one of the review standards. So we won't be doing a whole another case, but just kind of taking a look at what a hypothetical case is and how does this one review standard apply to it and really like work through it and focus on it. All of you are doing a great job. It's just that's no comment on any of your abilities, just the acknowledgement for just ongoing training and maintenance. We as staff do it. I know attorneys do it. So just important to keep our skills sharp.
One other note, and then I know you have a comment. One other thing that Chair Rabot and Rowan worked through was the addition of after a motion is made, checking back in with staff to make sure there's not any considerations that we're missing, which you heard today. So we'll continue to do that just to make sure that we give them place to help us clarify and not miss any considerations.
Also, let's be honest, Rowan, Chairwoman Rabot is still trying to break me. So, she's tried for 9 years.
Yeah. Sorry, Miss, one last thing. I will also be fleshing out the key considerations of the staff reports a little bit more. I did that pretty thoroughly for Cherry Market, so we will likely continue, maybe not as involved in this fashion, but maybe have some prompting questions for you to all help work through those standards. I know that they can be difficult, so we as staff will work on fleshing those out a little bit more as opposed to just kind of sending you out into the cold to have you work through those.
I just wanted to note that yesterday I attended what I will call Zoning 101 with the Heritage Hill Association and the Planning Department put on a session at Central Reformed Church. And I just kind of went to hear what everybody hears about what we do and how zoning works. And I want to commend staff. I think they did a good job. Went down a rabbit hole at the end of the meeting about Airbnbs and short terms, but the information that was shared and the way they shared it, I thought it was a good thing to be taking out on the road to tell citizens. So I wanted to express appreciation for that time.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Swanson. As you know, we're in the midst of a zoning ordinance update, so the event that Ms. Swanson attended is part of kind of outreach and awareness building for that effort, as well as just general zoning and land use, education and information sharing for our community. So we've been doing those since the summer. We have another event in partnership with Heritage Hill next Tuesday at Central Reformed Church, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So you are welcome to attend that. If you also would find benefit in the planning department presenting to any of your neighborhoods or your organizations, we are just taking those requests as they come into our office, and we'll likely be doing that up until the early spring or late spring, early summer, where we will transition to more engagement relative to the zoning ordinance update project itself.
Great. Thank you. With that, the meeting is adjourned.